Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good noon, and good afternoon, because we know that many people from around the world in different time zones are watching this event. So that's the reason why I should say welcome everyone from different time zone. This is a kind of research colloquium, what we call. The point is that the Refugee and Migration Lab, we have recently appointed 15 brilliant research affiliates. And as part of the introducing our research affiliates, we are organizing these events, what we call Research Colloquium 2025. And the title of this actually is a session, a PhD dissertation research across disciplines, because our affiliates, they actually belong to different disciplines like political science, sociology, anthropology, geography, gender studies, international relations, and many other disciplines. So we have 6 speakers today, and we have 3 distinguished, very accomplished scholars discussing. Professor Dina Siddiqui from New York University, Professor Olok Pal from the University of Chittagong, and Professor Nargis Kanefi, York University, Canada. So without any further delay, I will just go to our speaker to listen to them. Before just starting, I will just say a few words about Refugee and Migration Lab. Refugee and Migration Lab is a kind of research collectives of scholars working on refugee and migrations from around the world. So this is a kind of first growing academic network of scholars from different parts of the world. So this kind of event we are organizing at this stage to actually make a kind of nexus academic collaborations between early career researchers and established scholars. So this is the way how we could actually think of going forward to contribute to the global scholarships. So without further delay, I'm not going to read out the profile of the scholars, because in our event page, you can find every speaker's academic bio and all the discussants kind of academic bio in the event link. So please, I will request you to take a look at our event page. So first of all, I will welcome Dr. Nazia Khan to present your case. Your research, Nazia Khan has already completed PhD. We are going to listen to Nazia Khan. Dr. Nazia Khan, floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'll just share my slide. Yeah.
Nazia Khan. Okay, I'm just making you.
Just a second.
Just 1 minute. Yeah, you can share now, okay?
Yeah, I'll just share the slide.
Just share your slides.
I'm just sharing the slide. Just a second. Can you all see the slide?
No. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Now
you can see your slide. Yes.
Okay. So I will start with my presentation. Before that, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Dr. Nazia Khan, and currently an academic associate at Indian Institute of Management, Kashipur. From India. My PhD title is Religious Extremism in Sri Lanka and Myanmar, a Comparative Perspective. I'll give a background and research focus. Due to the rising violence against Muslims in Theravada Buddhist countries, it drew attention towards Buddhist-Muslim relation, and there was very limited comparative research which exists in this field. So I have conducted a comparative analysis of Sri Lanka and Myanmar, which both of which are the Theravada Buddhist countries, and they have a majoritarian and ethnocentric character, which shape their state policies and social dynamics. My study focuses on religious extremism targeting Muslims in Sri Lanka and Rohingya in Myanmar. The contextual the scope of the study is in the post 2009, when the civil war ended in Sri Lanka and there was a governance void, attacks on Muslims rose. And similarly in Myanmar, we see in 2011, in the post the liberalization and democratization which was happening, we saw a surge in the rise of violence against Rohingya Muslims. My aim was to examine the relationship between the Buddhist nationalism and religious extremism, and how there was rise of religious extremist groups in both the countries around this span of time. The objectives which I have looked at is to examine the relationship between Buddhist nationalism and the emergence of religious extremism in Sri Lanka and Myanmar, analyze the historical origins and underlying objectives of religious extremist organization in both countries, undertaken a comparative study of strategies and patterns of violence employed by these groups, and evaluated the role of the respective governments in addressing these religious extremist incidents. I have two hypotheses. The first is the politics of Buddhist nationalism in Sri Lanka since 2009 and Myanmar in the post-2011 democratic transition has contributed to the rise of religious extremism. And second is the homogenizing tendencies of the state and religious extremist groups are undermining the plural structure of Sri Lanka and Myanmar. I have adopted a comparative method, and my primary data included semi-structured interviews with academicians, political leaders, members of Buddhist nationalist groups, Rohingya representatives, and human rights activists. Next is the theoretical background I chose is the religious extremism. I have defined religious extremism, which upholds a core religious belief, but perceive internal and external threats, constricting an enemy to defend against. It is always, it constructs an enemy to defend itself against. And various authors have talked about how it is exclusivist in tendency. And Leibman has given three dimensions to it, like expansion of religious laws, isolation of non-adherents, and rejection of cultural norms seen as non-indigenous. And Vibhasena has talked about the multi-dimensional, not only stick to the political aspect, but also social psychological aspect of it. I identified various internal and external factors in which political, religious, social, economic, and democratic factors I have identified, and the external factors were 9/11 and rise of Islamophobia and globalization. It helps me to, see when I analyzed the Sri Lankan and Myanmar case, we see the various the multi-dimensional aspect of religious extremism playing out in both the countries, where political, economic, demographic, social, all aspects were included. So I have formed a table of comparative analysis between the two countries, in which I will talk about role of Buddhism, like Sri Lanka, which is a democratic country, but still you have it gives Buddhism the dominance. It has ethnocentric character. Myanmar, similarly, as Sri Lanka, gives Buddhism central to state identity and ethnocratic and majoritarian structure. However, Myanmar has struggled with democratic transition, and it has been under military coup from time to time. And if we look at the trigger for extremism, like for Muslims in Sri Lanka, it was only in post-Civil War 2009. If we don't look back at the colonial past, which has shaped the, where othering of Tamilians and Muslims have happened. But in 2009 particularly, we see the rise of shift from Tamilians to Muslims after the victory over LTT. And it was because the Buddhist nationalism has risen, and there was various religious extremist organizations which were thriving. In Myanmar, we'll see that 2011 democratic transition was opening the political and economic transition was happening. In Myanmar, we need to identify that Rohingya issue is a very prolonged issue, and 1982 Citizenship Act had rendered them stateless. So there has been wave of exodus of Rohingyas. But 2011, post 2011, we see a different kind of transformation happening within Myanmar, where the Rohingya were targeted by Rakhine Buddhists as well as the military junta. The Rakhine Buddhists consider themselves as indigenous, and they do not want to consider Rohingya as part of Myanmar at all. Like I had a talk with Shwe Mang, who was the only MP from Rohingya community from Butidong in Parliament. He had to. He's taken an asylum now. He's no longer an MP. So he said that 2011 was a turning point in the politics of Rohingya, as Rakhine Buddhists had the intention of eliminating Rohingyas from any kind of resource sharing in the northern Rakhine region. Now, coming to the political history, we see that Sri Lanka since 1948 they had independence. They have been a democratic, ethnocratic democracy. But Myanmar, as I said, has struggled with democracy, and still now it is under military coup since 2021. For a short period of time, NLD was in power, like Aung San Suu Kyi was in power, but now she's has been again under military junta. This recent political change I already explained. So the minority group which has been targeted is Muslims, and Muslims are particularly, Tamil speaking, though they are multilingual, but by ethnicity we can say they are Tamil speaking community. Rohingyas also they have a different ethnic community because their language is similar to Chittagonians. Like there are other Muslims also in Myanmar, which are Kaman Muslims and other, but Rohingyas particularly have their own ethnic identity, which clashes with the Bamar, Sinhala Buddhist identity. Next is the homogenization impact. Like since Sri Lanka and Myanmar are Buddhist, they give primary importance to Buddhism. So it undermines, plurality and promotes Sinhala Buddhist dominance. And in Myanmar, we have Bamar Buddhist dominance. But in Myanmar, in northern Rakhine region, it is the Rakhine Buddhist who are different from Bamar Buddhist, and they consider themselves as the indigenous. For Rohingyas, it's kind of double marginalization, because even Rakhine don't consider them as indigenous, and the state also doesn't consider them as indigenous. There are religious extremist organizations which emerged after 2009 in Sri Lanka are Sinhala Veera Vigana, Sinhala Ravaya Ravana Balaya Bodhu Sena, and in Myanmar we have 969 movements and Mabatha, which were quite popular. Factors leading to extremism in Sri Lanka, Oyangoda would say they fear small numbers, and there is Islamophobia, and there is threat to Buddhism from Muslims that led to all these rise of violence. In Myanmar, there is an ethnic issue related to Rohingyas, and there is also Islamophobia, threat to Buddhism, and the clash of indigenous identity. Now, regions, if we see in Sri Lanka, Muslims are not concentrated in one place. They are distributed. So Western and Northwestern province, Central and Southwestern province, where Muslims are targeted. And in Myanmar, Northern Rakhine region, like Mongdo, Butidong, Rothidong townships saw grave violence against Rohingyas. Now, looking at the impact of violence, like in Sri Lanka, it was linked to territory and power. Violence led to displacement, life, business, property, and there was internally displaced persons, and the use of hate speeches and hate crimes were prevalent, and a lot of loss of life and property and places of worship. In Myanmar, we see similar things were happening. However, because Rakhine Buddhist, along with the military, they started, ethnic cleansing, mass exodus of Rohingyas, and also there was mass graves formed of Rohingyas. Now, countering religious extremism, looking at the government perspective, like though Sri Lanka is a democracy, but it was not very, they have an institutional and constitutional framework which in a way helped minorities, Muslims, but they were not able to ban extremist organizations, especially when Rajapaksa government was in power, because they really promoted Buddhist nationalism and religious extremist organizations. They kind of empowered. If they were not directly involved, they empowered and expanded their influence and did not curb them. While in Myanmar, they used to ban 969 movement and Mawata, but they used to emerge from different names time to time. And even though like military junta supported them, they fund them and everything, but NLD government, they didn't fund them, don't support them, like they did not go for any speeches and all with them, but they did not take any actions also. So that is also the case. So in both the case, government was not very uh, they used them, in fact. So analysis, in the end, I would say this study shows that religious extremism in Sri Lanka and Myanmar is not spontaneous phenomena, but a product of colonial past, political instrumentalization, identity politics, and structural insecurities. Groups like Godubala Sena Mawata, under the garb of protecting Buddhism, they targeted the minority communities, Muslims. Through organized violence and also the use of digital mobilization like Facebook and social media happened a lot. Targeted attacks happened on minorities and their business and places of worship. And also displacement, basically how they were displaced from their places. And government response, I said that they were either complicit or it was a tool for them, to use them for vote bank politics and electoral gains. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nazia Khan. What I would say, yeah, so you have talked about a lot of interesting topic, particularly the religious extremism is a very problematic idea. And
Yeah.
Professor Dina Siddiqui will talk about it more, and also kind of political, instrumentalization of religious identity politics, and wonderful comparative studies comparative picture between Myanmar and Sri Lanka, and we'll go for it later. But so thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Now I will invite Mr. Ashrafuddin from University of South Wales, Australia. Ashrafuddin, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to share my my slide, if I may. I think, Nazia, you have to, could you please close your slide, please?
Yeah.
Okay. So, can you see the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I better make it full screen. Hi, everyone. So my name is Qazi Ashrafuddin. I'm a doctoral candidate of the University of New South Wales in the School of Law, Society, and Criminology. So I'm in third year of my candidature, and this is the working title of my project, though this is not the final title because it will be finalized later. So for now, I call it the Hijra, Trans Subjectivities and Cultural Shifts in Neoliberal Bangladesh, a transgender politics in transition. Okay, so so the context or the background is basically the tension in transgender politics and the shifting Hijra subjectivities in the wake of transnational and developmental interventions in Bangladesh. So so I found it problematic because nowadays what we used to know as the Hijra people, so their identity is in the process of becoming new. They're assuming new identities. So I found it to be connected to the new liberalization and also other developmental interventions of NGOs and donor organizations in Bangladesh. So there is a kind of social movement going on in terms of the transgender politics as well as the Hijra internal politics, which I found very problematic. And as I understand, to understand the overall transgender politics in Bangladesh, it is very important to understand the class-based or the class dimension or the social class dimension of gender non-binary in Bangladesh. So to be brief, my research has two major objectives. One I call the epistemological, and the one is ontological. So within the epistemological scope, my research explores how the hijras of Bangladesh are defined across different colonial, legal, pedagogical, and medical discourses. So it's my epistemological objective in my research. And from the ontological perspective, my research explores how the ongoing neoliberal interventions are shaping the transgender identity politics in Bangladesh. I also explore the implications of social class and economy in shaping Hijra subjecthood or identity, and how it is in the process of fluidity and movement. And I also explore how different social and community-based identity aspects, such as language, rituals, religion, citizenship status, migration, or urban status, and so on, they impact the Hijra's lived experience and constitute their identity. So my project is both an empirical project as well as a kind of archival or doctrinal project. Um, okay, so here I outline a few theories and ideas that I use in my in my thesis. So one is the intersectional feminism and the sociology of gender and identity formation in South Asia. So I look into how the Hijra identities are intersectionally shaped and how to have a nuanced idea about the gender politics, we need to understand the influence of different intersections of their lived experiences. So theories like Kimberly Crenshaw or Patricia Hill Collins, I use their ideas in my writing, in my thesis, though I haven't yet finished my analysis. So these are some of the theories that shaped my understanding of the transgender politics in Bangladesh. And also I look into how the transgender health in global southern context, as theorized by Rayon Connell, how the public health interventions in Bangladesh, how it sexualizes the gender identities and problematizes the politics. I also look into the trans-regional framework in Hijra scholarship, including the Indian scholarship and the Bangladeshi scholarship, and also look into, and also I'm using the idea of spatio-intellectual hegemony as propounded by Adnan Hussain, and also critical regionality to understand how even within this region, there are country-specific and territory-specific and cultural-specific understanding of Hijra identities. Overall, my project is a kind of decolonial project where the Western understanding of transgender, how it is not really compatible, or it has to have a kind of more nuanced aspect in its placement within the global South. So I use Walter Mignolo's idea of decolonial epistemology and also epistemic disobedience, and also, of course, Linda Tuhai's decolonial methodologies. And to situate this theorization within South Asian feminist tradition, I also use a neoliberal queer feminist governmentalities as outlined by Srila Roy. So these are some of the theoretical concepts that shaped my understanding so far. So it's a qualitative research project, so where I use multi-methods. So I have archival research as well as ethnographic research. For archival research, I went through the legal, medical documents and pedagogical documents to understand how the Hijra identities are represented and conceptualized in the institutional documents, and also cultural and literary survey to understand how they are culturally perceived as. And I also conducted a 6 months ethnographic fieldwork in Bangladesh, including the Rohingya refugee camp. So I conducted semi-structured interviews of Hijras and policy and lawmakers, structured interview of medical representatives, and also I did participant observation of Hijra rituals and economic and economic interactions. So I'm in the process of analysis. It's still going on. So I'm using critical discourse analysis for the archival part of my research, also narrative analysis for the ontological or ethnographic part, the conversation analysis, and also cultural content and interpretive analysis, as well as case study analysis of my interviews and of the hijras. So these are some of the few research findings I have had so far. So the data analysis is still going on. In the first place, I would say I have noticed the impact of British colonial legal structure in the criminalization and epistemic formation of non-normative gender behavior, which is very much colonially, our understanding is very much colonially shaped. At the same time, I found the gender politics in Bangladesh is very much um, uh, like socially, placed. So there's a social class dimension of upper class and working class, and to understand, even to understand the hijra and transgender, like in a way, it's a kind of binary in terms of politics. So it's also important to understand the social class dimension and also the upward mobility of many hijras in this context. It is also important to understand that the state's ambiguous relation with religion and legal reform, which complicates the question of human rights of the non-binary people in Bangladesh. Um, at the same time, from the ontological perspective, I also located this integration of traditional hijra culture and their kinship pattern, which is supposedly a consequence of the new liberal and globalized development intervention and activism. It also shapes their intimacy pattern as well. So the intimacy pattern and kinship pattern is in the process of major change among the hijras. So while there is new liberal secular politics is going on. At the same time, I also located a kind of counter secular, like religious politics, which I call the Hijra Madrasa or Islamic school as a counter secular social model of respectability, in contrast to the new liberal notion of respectability as self-dependent, independent, and also doing a job, not following the traditional Hijra rituals. So there is a like tradition, and a religion-based social model is in the rise among the Hijra people, which creates or which complicates another layer of transgender politics in Bangladesh. And lastly, not really lastly, I mean, for the moment, it is my last finding, that is the emergence of an ethno-religious Rohingya Hijra community in the context of forced displacement and faith-based ethnic insurgency. So these are a few findings I have had so far. But at the same time, I would like to talk about some other research extensions, or I call them the collateral byproducts of my doctoral research, which might be relevant to the research and migration lab, because this is part of, so this like research interventions and engagements, they emerged for my PhD project. So I recently authored an article. The title is Conducting Transgender Research Conducting Transgender Research with Rohingya Hijra Participants, Reflections on Methodological and Ethical Considerations. So, which is a part of my PhD as well, and I'm going to place it at the chapter of my thesis. And interestingly, this research has been a part of the methodology course of like University of New South Wales recently. So it's a part of the reading list. And at the same time, during the last section of my fieldwork, I came across the Rohingya refugees in the camp. So I spent around 1 month with them, and so I started to conceptualize, the figure of the transgender Rohingya refugees in the global South. So I have two theoretical kind of blending in this. One is Agamben's philosophical concept of the refugee. At the same time, like Professor Nasir is here, so his concept of the subhuman life. So so this is still like a work in progress. So I'm still thinking about this conceptualization. So I'm planning to theoretically frame the stateless transgender Rohingyas through continental philosophy and South Asian ethnographic approach, that is the subhuman life. So this is a project which is going on. And at the same time, I also drafted an advocacy paper for the Jean Monnet European Union Center for Excellence on intersectional justice in European Union external humanitarian aid for gender diverse Rohingya refugees. Apart from that, I also recently, because of my work on the Rohingya refugee transgender community, so I also got myself affiliated with the Caldo Center for International Refugee Law and Forced Migration Research Network. Both are situated at UNSW here. And finally, so when I was in the Rohingya refugee camp for about a month, I mean in Cox's Bazar, so I thought I intensively observed how the art-based project, including the embroidery and painting, how they kind of shaped, their cultural identity and also mental healing. So, so based on that fieldwork, I also co-authored an article named Ara Rosom, Arar Elom. So as you know, it means our culture, our knowledge, an exploration of art-based method in fostering cultural identity and mental healing. This is a forthcoming publication. It's still in the review process. And recently we have got some, I would say, positive reviews. So we are very hopeful about the publication of this paper. So yeah, that's more or less all about my research, my current research engagements. And thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much. It's a very fascinating project, and I really enjoyed myself. And also, this wonderful transgender idea and how this whole idea is related to kind of colonial foundation of criminalization, decriminalization, and also how you could relate it to the Rohingya protected situation, Rohingya transgender. I would love to know more about it, and I'm sure the audience, the people who participate in our Zoom platform and who are watching from around the world, they will enjoy and look forward to your work. Now I will, and particularly Professor Dina Siddiqui, I have noticed that she has taken a lot of notes and she has a lot to say about it, I know. And Professor Alok also, Professor Alok, our distinguished discussion, Professor Alok has completed, he completed his PhD on, we call sex workers, particularly HIV. So he has extensive research about it. So we are looking forward to listen to our distinguished discussions. Now I will go to, now we listen to India, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Bangladesh. Now we'll go to Africa. We'll look at African continent, how that's the reason why we just, give the title PhD dissertation research across discipline. Now we are across continent. Now, Dr. Doris Ijeoma, just I would invite you to present your case, please. Dr. Doris, is your turn. Can you hear me? Dr. Doris, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. I'm trying to share my screen.
Please join with your slide and your presentation. Dr. Doris from Nigeria. We have wonderful, speakers today.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, we can probably everybody can see. Yeah, please go ahead. You have 8 to 10 minutes for your presentation.
My network is poor, so I may not struggle to on my video. So my name is Doris Ijeoma Ajokoho. I'm a Nigerian, Ebonyi State to be precise. So I'm here to present my PhD dissertation titled Social Norms That Sustain Harmful Cultural Practices affecting the health and well-being of women and girls in Nigeria. As we all know, harmful cultural practices are those culturally and traditionally rooted practices that affect the health and well-being of women and girls, affect them medically, affect them psychologically, affect them emotionally, affect them economically, and otherwise. So here I have two major arguments. One is that people are aware that these practices exist. People are also aware that these practices are harmful, yet they continue to engage in it, they continue to practice them. A woman who experienced FGM, who while delivering, giving birth, saw what she passed through as a result of FGM, still come back to circumcise her girl child because the tradition says so. Then the second argument here is that women are victims, women are enforcers, women are at the same time perpetrators. So we cry that this thing is happening to us, it's affecting us, yet we are the ones enforcing and perpetrating these harmful cultural practices. And it is rooted in patriarchy, in the sense that you want to elongate your family name, you want to make sure your brother, your lineage, or from the paternal side is maintained and kept as supposed. So I have four major objectives, though the study is wider than this, but because of time, I just mainstreamed it to three objectives. One, to identify key harmful cultural practices that affect women and girls in Ebonyi State. Two, to examine how social norms come into play in sustaining them. Yet they know these things are harmful, but it is still happening because culture says so. So we want to look at those social norms where we look at the descriptive norm, people doing things because they feel other people do so. Injunctive norms, people doing things because other people expect them to do so. Then the moral norm, people doing things because they feel this is the right thing to do. So now the third objective here, we now looked at religion and women as compliant, as key compliance as well. Religion on the other side, both the Christian religion and the traditional religion has kept men above board, that no matter where a woman is, she is seen to be under a man. In marriage, in churches, like in Christian religion, in Catholic Church to be precise, the Reverend Fathers have higher position, higher levels, higher authority, while the sisters keep being under them, no matter the age gap, no matter the years of experience gap. Instead of a Reverend sister to say mass when the priest is not around, they prefer a catechist who is not an ordained person to do that, just to make sure that the women are kept underneath as it is. So the central theoretical framework here, we use social conventional theory of Jerry Mackey, 1996. Here, the key thing I'm bringing out from here is that behaviors are maintained through collective expectation. Norms become self-reinforcing across generations. Nobody is coming to beat you because you didn't do that. Nobody will come to quarrel you because you didn't do that. But you are doing it because you want to maintain what you met. You want to maintain what your parents kept. You want to maintain what your forefathers and all that kept. So harm persists due to communal pressure. These pressures are not seen and are not directly seen, let me use that word, but people try to follow up with those pressures. So it was a 100% qualitative study where focus group discussion was used, key informant interviews, and in-depth interviews. Across the state, I selected 6 local governments, 3 from the 3 senatorial zones, 2 local governments from each of the senatorial zones. So 169 respondents took part, people who have experienced gender harmful cultural practices, people who are aware of the implications of harmful cultural practices. Then beyond the individual, beyond the community members, I also interface with service providers, civil society organizations, service providers that respond to to harmful cultural practices in the state. Then the audio transcripts the audios were transcribed verbatim, and analysis was then done based on themes. So here I have 4 harmful cultural practices that this study focused on: female genital mutilation, spousal rape. Because you have paid someone's dowry, it is your right to have sex with her whenever you deem fit, whether she's interested or not. So that kept coming as
Dr. Doris, are you there? We cannot hear you. Probably there are kind of, internet connectivity issue. So far, I remember before starting, she was talking about it. There's a kind of poor connectivity in Nigeria where she is now. So probably we'll go back to her again if their connections reestablished again. Better we can move on to, to use our best time. I will go to now Miss Konok Chapa Dash.
I'm here.
Are you back?
I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
here, Prof.
Okay, please continue.
I'm here, Prof. Yes, I'm back.
Yeah, you have a couple of minutes left still. Please continue.
Okay. So, yeah.
Can you share your
I was
slides?
talking about the harmful
Can you
culture.
share your slides?
Yes,
Oh, please. It's okay. Please take your time. It's
I'm
quite
sharing it.
understandable. It's quite understandable that you have some, network issues. No worry. Just go ahead. Yes. You have still a couple of
Okay, are you seeing
minutes.
my screen now? Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see. We can see. It's visible.
Okay. Okay. So I've talked about spousal rape, corpse cleansing, right? It's one of the harmful practices that women are compelled to go into. So when someone dies, they are the ones that cleans the corpse, they are the ones that stays with the corpse. So in situations where someone died of infectious disease, that exposes those women, the daughter-in-law, that exposes them to danger of contracting those infectious diseases. Then male child preference is one very key thing that kept coming out, whether among the educated, among the non-educated, among the Christians and all that. So it kept reoccurring. Then disinheritance of women and girls in landed properties, that was very clear, and a lot of people are affected with that. Movement restrictions, there are certain cultural practices or that once it is happening, women are not allowed to move out, especially to where those rituals are happening. Then widowhood right, that was also found and common. Then ghost marriage, arranged marriage, child early and forced marriage. These are among the harmful cultural practices that we saw that are happening in Ebonyi. Polygyny is one of them, a situation whereby a man marries more than a wife, and either to maintain the family name, either to show patriarchy, either to show authority, because he's the head of the family. Then finally, we also understood that there's what they call cleansing after adultery. If a woman is suspected or confirmed to have committed one adultery or another, the family, especially the female relatives, will compel her to go through that cleansing, because it's assumed that if that cleansing is not done, the husband may die, the children will begin to experience certain misfortunes. Whereas a man can have 3, 4, 5 women, concubines, girlfriends, have extramarital affairs, and it's not linked to any of the family misfortunes. So, like we said, we try to look at the social norms that sustain all these things. Back to the descriptive norm, people circumcise their children because others are circumcising their children, knowing fully well that these things are wrong. So they still go ahead to circumcise their children. Then injunctive norms, I do this because I'm expected to do it. If I don't have a male brother, people expect me to go and marry a young girl to keep giving birth for my family, to maintain that family name, since my father is unable to give birth to a male child and all that. Then moral norms, people doing things because they feel it's right or wrong. So there are sanctions that are attributed to deviating to these harmful cultural practices. If you refuse to do that, it brings about shame, it brings about exclusion, it brings about punishment. A man who refuses to go into polygamy when his wife is unable to give birth, people see him as a weakling. A woman is controlling him and all that. So these are the things that kept the harmful cultural practices in existence, despite the knowledge of what it enforces. So women and religion, I've mentioned before, they are the enforcers, mothers, mother-in-laws, aunties. They're the ones that say, no, this girl is pregnant out of wedlock. She's not allowed to stay in this house. So in all, in conclusion, I came up with what I call women against women theory of harmful cultural practices. Why? Because as the interview was going on, I kept hearing women are the ones doing FGM. Women are the ones compelling a girl child who took pregnant out of wedlock to get married. Women are the ones arranging for ghost marriage. Women are the ones accusing their brother's wife of committing adultery and all that. So that now led me to what I now called women against women theory of harmful cultural practices. Even though it didn't reflect in the thesis itself, it was after the analysis and presentation that this theory came up. And I've worked on it, trying to bring it up for publication. So in all, I'm here to say that women cry for harmful cultural practices, yet we are the enforcers. And men, because it favors them in a great way, they enjoy it and nobody is saying much about it. So I keep saying that for change to happen, women will have to be called to sit in the meeting to understand this, to take a bold step of stopping all these harmful cultural practices, because they are not doing it out of ignorance. They're just to maintain the culture. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Doris, and it's wonderful to listen to you. And we can see the harmful cultural practices, how existing cultural practices are actually harmful for women's rights, their existence, their liberty, and also how women the practice in the system in Nigeria could work. It's not in terms of patriarchy. It's also rules of women are harmful for women. It's a wonderful idea. We'll talk about it later, and I hope that the audience who are watching us from around the world, they're enjoying a different kind of sense of womanhood in African continent, with the case of Nigeria. Now I'll go for Konok Chapa Dash, Central Florida University, USA, to present her dissertation case, particularly in 8 to 10 minutes. Konok Chapa.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain my research proposal. I'm Konok Dash, and I'm a third-year PhD candidate. When I pursued the PhD program, I had already a clearly developed interest in understanding the reproductive and sexual health experience of Rohingya women and girls living in the refugee camps in Bangladesh. About 4 years ago, I had already conducted a collaborative rapid assessment public health study after a major broke out in the refugee camp in March of 2021. And this project especially highlighted the difficulties experienced by female refugees. For my PhD thesis, I'm continuing to study the same population in the same location. Let me give a little introduction of Rohingya community. The Rohingya are an ethnic Muslim group who have lived in the Rakhine state of Myanmar for centuries, but their history has been one of oppression and persecution by the Myanmar government and Buddhist majority. Their language is Rohingya or Rohingya. The origins of Rohingya can be traced back to the Arakan kingdom in the 15th century, but their status as a distinct ethnic group was only recognized in the 1950s. Since then, the Rohingya have been subjected to a range of discriminatory policies and violent attacks, leading to what the United States has called a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. One of the key factors in the oppression of the Rohingya has been their lack of citizenship and legal recognition in Myanmar. In 1982, a new citizenship law was passed which effectively excluded the Rohingya from citizenship, rendering them stateless. This has had a range of negative consequences for the Rohingya, including restrictions on their freedom of movement, access to education and healthcare, and the ability to own property or marry without government approval. These policies have effectively made the Rohingya second-class citizens in their own country. The situation for the Rohingya has only worsened in recent years. This violence was sparked by the rape and murder of Buddhist women and led to a wave of anti-Rohingya riots and attacks. Since then, the Myanmar government has been accused of a range of human rights violations against the Rohingya, including extrajudicial killings, rape, and forced displacement. These actions have led to a humanitarian crisis with hundreds of thousands Rohingya fleeing to neighboring country Bangladesh to escape persecution. The international community has been slow to respond to the crisis in Myanmar, with many countries hesitant to criticize the government for fear of damaging economic ties. The existing literature on Rohingya reproductive health frequently highlights cultural and religious factors as primary barriers to contraceptive use and family planning adoptions. Some scholars and humanitarian reports emphasize that conservative religious beliefs and patriarchal social norms limit women's agency in making reproductive choices, associating low contraceptive uptake with perceived religious prohibitions against contraceptions or male-dominated decision-making. Studies often point to high fertility rates, traditional family structures, and limited reproductive autonomy as characteristic of Rohingya communities. One recurrent issue in the literature is the assumption that these cultural and religious norms are static and unavoidable obstacles to family planning adoptions. For example, different NGO reports highlight the reluctance of male community leaders or religious figures to support contraception, portraying these perspectives as barriers rooted solely in Islam or Rohingya cultural identity. While these factors undoubtedly play a role, this is not the main issue. Moreover, some narratives within the literature simply indicate that Rohingya communities are responsible for their current situation due to the same religious and patriarchal values. This viewpoint fails to acknowledge the context of forced migration, persecution, and statelessness that defines their existence. By isolating family planning behaviors from the historical and political realities surrounding the Rohingya, such analysis can contribute to a narrative that unfairly blames the community for the challenges they face, accordingly reinforcing stereotypes about backwardness or resistance to modernity. Placing responsibility for reproductive health challenges solely on Rohingya religious beliefs or patriarchy disregards the broader structural and historical forces that shape their lives. The Rohingyas' vulnerability stems from systematic and sustained oppression, persecution, and forced displacement, not from inherent cultural resistance to family planning. For decades, Rohingya communities have been deprived of basic rights and denied access to education, healthcare, and livelihood opportunities, a form of structural violence that directly influences their reproductive decisions. My research aims to provide a more nuanced exploration of Rohingya women's reproductive health decisions, particularly focusing on the intersection of socio-political, cultural, and gender dynamics that shape these choices. Rather than isolating cultural beliefs as obstacles, my study will examine how these beliefs interact with oppressive conditions in which the Rohingya are forced to live. Unlike prior publications that may unintentionally place blame on the Rohingyas' religious beliefs or patriarchal structures, my research will prioritize the broader historical and socio-political factors influencing family planning decisions. Here is my research questions. My main research question I'm going to answer or I'm going to explore: how do Rohingya women make decisions about family planning in the context of living in the Cox's Bazar refugee camps in Bangladesh? There will be few sub-questions. As what social, cultural, experiential factors drive Rohingya women's family planning decisions? What structural factors, including financial, housing, and legal status, shape Rohingya women's family planning and decisions? My second questions would be how the seeking of family planning care experienced by the Rohingya women in the context of living in the Cox's Bazar refugee camps in Bangladesh, and what is the coping mechanism, how they are coping with the situations, and how they are overcoming the challenges they are facing regularly. So my research methodology is currently I'm in Bangladesh to conduct my dissertation fieldwork. I'll conduct my actual fieldwork from first week of July, since November 31, and it will be an ethnographic qualitative research in multiple camps within Cox's Bazar for participant observation and rapport building. I will spend first few days in the camps, and currently I'm visiting the camps and trying to build my rapport. And then I'm going to conduct in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, key informant interviews. So why I am the right person to do the research? My academic foundation in anthropology, particularly my bachelor's and master's degrees from Shahjalan University of Science and Technology, has allowed me to specialize in ethnographic research methods. I have focused my studies on sexual and reproductive health and rights, particularly those of marginalized populations. My undergraduate monograph and master thesis were both centered on SRHR. My work has shaped my relationship with the Rohingya community as a research assistant at the Bragg James P. Grant School of Public Health, Bragg University, where I was involved in a range of projects, including those focused on adults and reproductive and sexual health and the impact of COVID-19 on displaced populations. From December 2023 to January 2024, I visited the Rohingya camps for my preliminary fieldwork and experienced that further deepened my connection with the community. During this visit, I engaged directly with the Rohingya individuals, health workers, and local leaders, gaining first-hand knowledge of their reproductive health issues and the social factors influencing their decisions.
Just you have 2 minutes to finish.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So being a native Bangladeshi, I'm fluent in Bangla and the primary language spoken by the host communities and many individuals working in the camps. Additionally, from my previous work and field visits, I have gained proficiency in the Rohingya language, which has allowed me to communicate directly with the community members without relying on any interpreters. So the project will contribute to the anthropological understanding of reproductive health by illustrating how Rohingya women and men navigate reproductive decision making within the constraints of limited access to healthcare and resources, which are common in refugee camps settings. So there is some images I have captured from the camps. You can see the condition of the shelter of refugee camps. Thank you, everyone, for listening to my proposal.
Thank you so much. Just to let you know that there are a lot of Rohingya experts in this Zoom platform, even because all the time I say I don't encourage too many people in the Zoom platform not to make it a crowd. But still, we have Dr. Ronan Lee. He is renowned scholar Rohingya refugee, and Dr. Tazreen Sajjad from American University, Washington D.C. She has done wonderful work. Professor Alok and Nargis Kanefi, even Professor Dina Siddiqui, a lot of people, even Professor Rafiq Shahriar from Dhaka University Peace and Conflict Studies, and he has edited a wonderful volume. So a lot of people here. So we'll go to the next speaker because we need to maintain strict timeline. But I would suggest all the speakers to look at the chat box. There are a lot of questions coming up. Please look at the chat box, read here the questions. If there's any questions particularly for you, you could respond to the questions in the chat box. There are a lot of questions coming out, and I'm receiving a lot of questions from different social media platforms. We'll go to our next speaker, Mr. Mamoun Bhuiyan from the Brunel University of London. Mamoun,
Hi,
please.
thank you. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, please.
Is it visible now?
Yeah, as we can see. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, RML, for providing me with the opportunity to present my research. So my name is Mamoun Bhuiyan, and I'm a doctoral student in sociology at Brunel University of London. And prior to this, I was a research officer at the Reserve Bank of India and a researcher at the National Health Services, England. And currently, I'm working on incarceration, detention, identity, and marginality in incarcerated spaces of Assam. I do not have a formal title yet, but the work that I'm sharing with you largely revolves around incarcerated lives in Assam, caste, race, and the politics of hygiene. My research is situated in Assam, a northeast Indian borderland state from where I myself belong. Being a borderland and a diverse state, Assam has been through various social and political movements, which may not be unique compared to other regions, but political movements in Assam gave rise to regulations such as the National Register of Citizens or the Foreigners Tribunals that produced significant anxieties around citizenship debates in the state. As a result, many citizens of the state, often from rural and border districts, found themselves detained on allegations of being illegal immigrants from Bangladesh, especially when one is a Bengali-speaking Muslim racially labeled as Tamia. I'm not looking into the political aspect of the citizenship per se, but how these individuals experience detention. Their marginalization is not something that begins with detention. It is something that they have been living with long before it. So I'm trying to understand how such marginality gets intensified and reshaped in these incarcerated spaces. And theoretically, till now, I have located my work at the intersection of critical race theory, embodiment studies, and caste. And drawing on critical race theory, I look at how racialized suspicion, particularly against the Bengali-speaking Muslims and the border population, is institutionalized through detention. They are cast as permanently alien, regardless of documentation or history. I bring in Dalit and anti-caste scholarship to understand how caste is reproduced within the incarcerated spaces, not just through language or not through language or hierarchy, but through bodily labor, access to hygiene, and through the concepts of purity and pollution. And through the embodiment literature, which is the body, I analyze how cleanliness, dirt, and discipline becomes techniques of control. So hygiene then becomes a moral language, a tool of othering, and a racialized and caste-coded practice within the incarcerated spaces. So incarceration here is not just legal confinement, but it is a racialized and caste-inflicted and bodily experience of exclusion. So I'm still in the process of analyzing the data. I have proposed this study based on how, again, caste, race, and hygiene intersect. So how does incarcerated individuals narrate, resist, or live through these experiences? And this is where my methods come to play, as in how these lived experiences can be expressed through silence, drawing, photo elicitation, and storytelling. So in this way, I plan to approach incarceration as a social and sensory world where bodies are watched, cleaned, and listened. So my methodology is largely shaped around my positionality. I'm a native of the state as well as familiarity of the language. And more importantly, I would like to acknowledge that my caste identity as an upper caste Assamese allowed me to this.
Mr. Mamoun, is your
Yeah.
slide moving, or you are presenting the first slide? You need to move
No,
the
it's
slide.
moving.
No, it's not.
Yeah, we haven't seen your slides move,
Yeah,
so
it doesn't move.
maybe you can
You are just reading out some text, but your slides are not moving.
Oh
So
my
please
God.
check.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hang on.
it's okay. Take your time. Yeah.
It says that the screen sharing is paused, but I don't know how.
You know, it was working well. Okay.
Which slide is it on now?
It was always on the first slide.
Oh,
I don't think it ever moved. Ah,
Yeah, this is your one. It's okay. It's visible now. Please. Okay, proceed on, please. Move
so
the
this
slides
is
and yeah,
visible.
yeah, it's working now.
Okay, so basically, I was talking about my field work where
Yeah,
my
please.
position allowed access to the incarcerated space like the detention centers and the restricted areas across the border. And I have conducted 8 months of field work in Assam, especially in the districts that share a boundary with Bhutan and Bangladesh. And it has not been long that I've come back from field work, which is why like I'm yet to analyze the data. And as I said, my methodological approach is creative in nature and comprises of storytelling through photo elicitation and handmade drawings. So I use these photos not just as visual prompts, but an emotional way that allowed people to reflect their memories and bodily experiences, and in ways that might feel less invasive rather than direct questioning. I invited participants to create drawings like maps of incarcerated spaces or sleeping spaces, and other abstracts that might represent fear, shame, or isolation, especially through Olekha Kobita, which means unwritten poems that have been popular among the detainees, and then Hater Kam, which means handwoven work that they used to do and within the end, in their everyday routines, and the relationships that they developed, which is the bhai bhaistar সম্পর্ক, which they, so these are the terms that they provided and has shaped the methodology. And is the next slide visible?
Yeah. It's quite okay.
So from an early stage analysis and observation would be that how hygiene becomes a moral language in incarceration, and there have been instances of unequal access to food, limitations again based on caste and race coded assumptions. For instance, like certain sections of the incarcerated people are asked to clean toilets while others are not. Again, a caste coded assumption. So, going forward, I will engage in theories and around the themes that are being identified as of now. I'll be also working on the visual aspect of the data by drawing connections between like images, silence, and carceral control. So pretty much that sums up my study till now, where like caste, race, and the body are central to my study, especially the embodied experiences which are shaped by labor, hygiene, surveillance, and exclusion. So thank you very much for listening, and so sorry for the slide thing.
Thank you so much, Mamun. It's wonderful to listen to you. I'm very, very happy to see a brilliant young researchers, early career researchers. They are doing a very fascinating work in different parts of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and different other continents. And thank you so much, Mamun. Now we'll go for our last speaker, Ghazal Khan. This is your turn. Yeah.
Okay, is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Ghazal Khan and I am a doctoral candidate at the Department of Humanities and Social
Ghazal,
Sciences.
can you turn your video on?
So I think it will consume more data. That's the reason for smooth functioning.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay. Just show your slides.
Okay, so I am placed in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. Also, my discipline is English literature. I would like to begin my presentation with a quote which features in the work titled "The Need for Roots," which
Ghazal,
says,
excuse me. I can see in the live streaming, there's a kind of black plate on your slide. It's not quite fully visible. Can you check?
Yeah,
Is
not
it
on
dark?
Zoom.
There's a dark plate on your slide. It's not properly fully visible.
Is it better now?
Would you mind stopping sharing, then again reshare,
Stop share.
and then reshare? Probably, yeah, probably. I mean, it's better now. Okay, please proceed on. You can see the full slide, but still the dark plate is there. I don't know why. Just go ahead, please.
So I would like to begin my presentation with this quote, which says that to be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul, which features in the work titled "The Need for Roots." And with this, I introduce my tentative title of my doctoral thesis, which is Borderscapes, Gender in Geopolitical Space, Recontextualizing Counter-Memory through Select-Mediated Narratives of the Rohingya Crisis. My research delves into the select-mediated narratives of the Rohingya crisis to study the memory politics involved in the process of production, interpretation, and the dissemination of its memory. So the keywords involved in this research inquiry is memoir, mediation, prosthetic memory, visual culture, and Rohingya narratives. To begin with, memory is an umbrella term for all the processes of a biological, medial, or social nature, which relates past and present and the future in a socio-cultural context. Memory studies scholarship is concerned about the processes of remembering and forgetting. Coming on to the autobiographical memory, which often memoir, the genre that I am considering in my research, adopts. It often studies individual phenomena as a measure of how and what an individual remembers about their experiences and what these memories can tell us about the nature and meaning of this individual memory itself. And Mary Warnock's work, Memory.
Ghazal, if you don't mind, your slide is not moving. Your slide is not moving. Is there any technical issue? I'm not sure.
It again says that something that happened with the previous presenter, your screen sharing is paused.
There is no reason to be paused. Would you mind again sharing? Because it's just slide is stopped. It's not moving.
Did it never move?
It's now moving. I mean, still, yeah, it's moving now. Please go ahead.
Okay, should I go ahead like this?
Yeah, please. Yeah, it's moving.
Okay. So yes, Mary Warnock's work, Memory, in her work, she writes that the more we know about memory and the science is developing rapidly, the better equipped we will be to appreciate memoir as a major genre of imaginative literature. Coming on to prosthetic memory that I will be majorly dealing in my thesis. So prosthetic memories are independent memories which do not only belong to the community, to one community, and this form of memory is situated within specific historical context, and notably something that I said, it differs from the collective memory as it is not confined to the ownership of any particular group. And they are produced through what Alison Landsberg says the person who has conceptualized this theory of prosthetic memory says that a person's mass-mediated experience of a traumatic event of the past. And my thesis basically focuses on this mediation aspect. And literature as an empathic art form allows us to interact with the prosthetic memory of the Rohingya crisis through some cultural texts that I intend to study. Also, I would like to bring to you what Alison Landsberg writes in her integral work, which says that the book argues that the modernity makes possible and necessary a new form of public cultural memory. This new form of memory, which I call prosthetic memory, emerges at the interface between a person and a historical narrative about the past at an experiential site, such as a movie theater or a museum. In this moment of contact, an experience occurs through which the person sutures himself or herself into a larger history. In the process that I am describing, the person does not apprehend a historical narrative, but takes on a more personal, deeply felt memory of the past, even though which he or she did not live. The resulting prosthetic memory has the ability to shape that person's subjectivity and politics. So coming on to what is the Rohingya crisis, something that my fellow presenter, Ms. Konak, has actually elaborated upon. But to give you some context, in the current times, the Rohingya people who have been persecuted since 1982 and before that too, in the 1982, the Citizenship Act of 1982 has actually made them illegal citizens. So in the current times, the Kutpalong and Nayara regions in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar are offering temporary settlements to more than 880,000 Rohingyas, and the United Nations had declared Rohingyas as the most persecuted minority in the world. Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak finds that Rohingya refugees are the worst subalterns in the world today. Coming on to the Rohingya literature, which is a poetic and a political intervention, and it is to notice that at this juncture, the refugee literature is distinct from the narrative produced by asylum claimants in legal or bureaucratic forums, which involves narration, and it has a specific purpose. The distinction lies in the fact that the literary and cultural texts not only provide alternative, less coercive narrative forums, but also draw attention to the challenges of accounting for traumatic experiences within prescriptive legal and political context. Coming on to my primary texts of inquiry, I have 4 primary texts that I will be analyzing. The first one is titled First They Erased Our Name. The complexity of this work is that it is a memoir which deals with the life of Habibur Rahman, and it is co-authored by Sophie Onsel, a French journalist, which is then translated by somebody called Andrea Rees. This genre, with all its complexity, becomes one of my primary texts, because this is what I mean by mediated narrativization. When a non-Rohingya and a European person comes on to narrate the story of, in this case, Habibur Rahman. Coming on to my next primary text, yes. The next one is Burma Chronicles, and this is by the Canadian author Guy Delisle. The translator is Helge Dascher. And this is also a graphic memoir which doesn't explicitly talk about the Rohingya crisis, but in bits and pieces, and through certain references, it does gives us a picture of the context in which the genocide happened and what happened before the actual genocide unfolded. So this is another mediated narrative that I will be looking at. The next one is In Search of Myanmar, Travels Through a Changing Land, which is by an illustrator and author, James Fable, who is based in UK and who has spent 9 months in Myanmar. This work, again, a mediated narrative, talks about the Rohingya crisis.
Excuse me, Ghazal, you have just 1.5 minutes left.
Okay, I'll wind up. So coming on to the last text, which is a fictionalized memoir by Mumtaz Musa Saleh, somebody from South Africa, who talks about the sexualized violence that was happening during the Rohingya crisis. So with the time crunch that we have, I'll come on to the research questions. My PhD inquiry focuses on how memoir functions in narrativizing different aspects of borderland experiences of the Rohingyas through mediated narratives, and how traumatic memories perceived, ordered, and interpreted, and how these temporal orderings confirm, extend, or questions the meaning of the borders. It also questions how prosthetic memory becomes a mode of global memory aesthetics and mediated narrativization of the Rohingya crisis, and what is omitted, who edits memory, and how suffering is selectively framed and curated. The objectives that aligns with my research questions are to examine the role of mediation in shaping refugee testimony, to critically assess the politics of memory curation in the context of Rohingya experience, to theorize what I call in my doctoral thesis interstitial memory as memory framed in the process of conversations, editing, and translation, and to draw from prosthetic memory, but to locate the global Rohingya memory as a non-normative mnemonic site. The methodology, which is very common in my discipline, is going to be close reading and textual analysis. I will also refer to secondary materials like the interviews, articles, and review papers. And my analysis will I'll draw from theories from theorists like Alison Landsberg, Michel Foucault, Cathy Caruth, Gaston Bachelard, Henri Lefebvre, and others.
Just one concluding sentence. Please.
Okay, so this is with this I conclude. Thank you so much, and these are my references. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. We actually we would love to listen to you for a longer time, but we need to maintain time. But there's a lot of fascinating presentations we have. We have wonderful, brilliant speakers as a Refugee and Migration Labs research affiliates. So we have wonderful, distinguished discussions today, and we'll listen to our discussions, comments, suggestions, and I hope that all 6 speakers will be greatly benefited from their comments and take. First, I will invite Professor Dina Siddiqui from New York University. Professor Dina Siddiqui.
Those were 6 really, really compelling, fascinating research projects are being turned into a book, and it's really hard to say something about them. They're also quite different, although they have strands. So what I'm going to do is talk about 3 themes, rather than talking about them individually, that came up for me in all of them in different ways, and they do get addressed in some more than others. The first is, and I'm speaking here as a professor talking to you, I'm not speaking down, the need to historicize and to think about, to locate each of these topics in the colonial past in particular, right? So when you're talking about the way in which a category is used, let me actually give a concrete example here. So let me start with the first one on ethno-nationalism and the comparative politics, and it showed it really well. I would want to know a little bit more about it. So we have these colonial categories like race, caste. These are very much produced through colonial bureaucratic structures, through censuses, right? Amongst other things, through the administration, the colonial need to know the native population, right? And in a lot of ways, when we're thinking about this, what is my first question to all of this, and I think some of you have done this, is to think more about how these colonial categories get carried on and get reanimated in new ways. There's a continuity, and then there's way in which they come back, they sneak back even into development discourse. So the first thing is to think about, this is very abstract, and I will try and get to concrete examples. That's historicized by actually thinking through colonial, the epistemology that we use. We are so used to thinking in terms of certain categories of tradition and modernity. The second thing is the transnational connections. And this I can give easily from the first presentation, the comparative aspect of Sri Lanka and Myanmar. I remember when there was something happening. There was a temple, a Buddhist temple in Ramu was destroyed. A friend in Sri Lanka told me that the Bodhubala Sena in Sri Lanka were raising funds to send money to the Chittagong Hill Tracts to rebuild that temple. So one of the aspects of thinking through what's happening in each of your situations is to think not only about the national, but also about the connections between the national and the transnational, which means not getting bogged down in what we would call methodological nationalism, because in every one of your spaces, what is happening is not just happening inside what constitutes Bangladesh or Nigeria or Sri Lanka. There are constantly, and related to this, I would say something that I didn't hear as much, there is then the issue of NGOs and funding. All of these things, whether we are talking about, I'm assuming Ashrafuddin has thought about this, of course, but in Bangladesh, and we just maybe didn't get to hear about it, the medical discourses, the fact that hijras now have access to jobs, or at least did in the last government, that's also about presenting the nation state as a modern nation state to the rest of the world. The government is making that, right? It's also about getting certain kinds of NGO funding, right? Again, I do think the transnational connectivity part is that all of you have fantastic research projects, but that's something that I think could be foregrounded a little bit more, both the NGOization, and the funding part and the transnational. So I have, I've been thinking about this relationship between the national and the transnational. So for instance, I don't know about Nigeria, but in Uganda, for instance, the transnational part is very, very important for thinking about what we think of cultural norms and what we think of culture. So we know very much that the new anti-homosexuality bills that have been passed in places like Uganda have not been passed because there is something called culture. That's just there from time immemorial. You've had US evangelical Christians go into all of these places and tell them that homosexuality is bad for Christianity. And this is where I'm again going back to my the continuities of colonial categories, this thing called harmful cultural categories. It is a deeply colonial category in that sense. It's what I would call an empty category. Whatever you need to have as the next worst thing that a culture in a country in the global south has, you can put it in. We used to joke in Bangladesh, one year they're going to, 1 month they're going to give us money for fighting child marriage. The next year they're going to give us funding money for sex trafficking, right? All of this is getting tied into what constitutes local culture. So I would say actually for you, and this is again for everybody else, and I'm part of Gonok's dissertation committee, so I've told her, and she's really tried to historicize that. I was really happy to see that you can't just always blame culture. This is not to say that there aren't terrible patriarchal practices, but even what we call patriarchal practices in a place like Bangladesh or Nigeria have to be historicized through thinking of a colonial lens, through thinking through a colonial lens. And I know things like FGC and other things have become big issues for nationalists precisely because of the way in which a civilizational discourse has been mobilized under colonialism, but also today in different kinds of ways. I don't know how much time we have. I was trying to not talk only about single papers, but I mean, in that, I really appreciated the fact that we can talk about religious extremism and Buddhism because global Islamophobia makes it seem as though only Islam is the only thing, only religion in which there is something called extremism. I'm not even sure what language to use. And I would not use the language of countering violent extremism. It's the language of the war on terror that the US uses. I would try and find, I think your project is wonderful. And I really like what, your analysis was great. But I'd be careful to not reinscribe hegemonic global north kind of languages when you're talking. Hitra, I think you've got the class dimension is really, really, really important to think about. I will share just one thing. I did a little bit of research on for some public health thing a long time ago, and this young man who self-identified in Bangladesh as gay said, Dinapa, if I were from a different class, I would really much rather be Hitra, but my family might accept gay. This is in Bangladesh, but Hijra is a very different thing. So I really appreciate your pointing that. I would love to hear more about this project. I don't know very much more about it. Doris, I think I've said. Konok, I talk to you all the time, but I want to ask Konok about memory and trauma. When you're talking to people, how do you think about, I really appreciate all of Tazrina's points, but how will you know how the memory of the trauma affects what they say? It's not simply there's some individual kind of decision. I think there's the trauma of being in Myanmar, but there's also the trauma of remembering, of other people constantly remembering, but also of researchers constantly coming. I see this with garment workers. They have their answers ready because it's one more person who's going to tell you to perform your suffering, right? So that's something, we can really think about. I love the thing on hygiene and caste, and it's really interesting to, I have, think about, I didn't realize Mia was a racialized category, but I think, again, you're doing the colonial continuity part that is so, so important. In that sense, and it's so refreshing to get something that's not just about border making. আমার অনেক কথা বলা হয়ে গেছে বোধহয় না
It's okay, it's okay. Yeah, thank you so much. It's actually it's very helpful for the speakers because this is the refugee and migration labs. That's one of the objectives of forming this kind of research collective so that the early career researchers can be benefited in contact in consultation with the established experienced researchers. Now I will welcome Professor Olakwal from University of Chittagong. Please.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I learned a lot from Dina Siddiqui. I think it's a brilliant discussion from Professor Dina Siddiqui. Distinguished discussants and my dear moderator, young scholars, presenters actually, and brilliant audiences. So very good evening from here, from Chittagong, Bangladesh. So first of all, I'd like to show my gratitude to Professor Nasiruddin for inviting me here as a discussant for the discussion. And I'm very overwhelmed to see Professor Dina Siddiqui and Professor Nargis Kanefi. Nargis Kanefi is here.
Yeah. She's here next to you.
Beside me. So, and I like to congratulate all brilliant speakers who actually shared their research experiences, research journey with us. It's brilliant. So when I was a PhD scholar in 2005, I think I was not like that. So it's brilliant. Before commenting on individual presentation, I'm not going to present, make any comment, really critical comment on individual presentation. I'll try to speak some issues which are very necessary, useful for young researchers or early career researchers. Actually, some people are watching, some people are staying here in this platform, but many audiences are actually watching this event in the net, in the social media. So I will speak for them. First of all, I think most of the presenters actually touched this issue. And the first thing is we have to have a very clear idea about a research question in every research. So we can say the epistemological framework or ontological, which actually Ashraf mentioned very clearly. So, and the second thing is good literature review or theoretical framework for every research. So sometimes I like to research on public health issues because, you know, what actually Nasir mentioned, Professor Nasir mentioned that I did my PhD in University of Durham, UK, on public health issues. Some stigmatized people like sex workers, drug users, Indian truck drivers, something like this. And my research project actually looked at how location affects human health and which issues put these people into vulnerability. So, and I'm not very theoretical geographer. I like to prefer to say myself as empirical geographer. So the second thing is literature review or theoretical framework. So some people, some researchers like to prefer use very recent or contemporary literature or citations in their research, in their monograph, in their PhD dissertation. But I prefer 10 to 15 years literature in the text or in the thesis. So the third issue is we have to have a very clear idea for the field, which actually Mamun Bhuya mentioned. So field is very interesting and fascinating. And some social researchers actually try to adopt or follow different field techniques or strategies for good data collection. So, and we have to keep in mind that there are many types of field challenges the researchers have to face. For your information, Professor Nasir and I tried to publish a book from Palgrave Macmillan. The title is Palgrave Handbook on Social Fieldwork. And there are 25 chapters in that book, and there are fascinating chapters in that book, in that piece of work. So fieldwork is very interesting, and if we want to make ourselves as a very good researcher, social researcher, I think we have to know our field very well. So it's very important. We have to face the challenges, field challenges, and we have to know how we can address or adapt to these challenges. And I think that the other thing is we have to follow some standard guidelines, steps, and techniques for capturing, collecting, and observing field data. It might be human, it might be natural phenomena. Some geography students, archaeology students, even anthropology, environmentalists, they like to some extent, they like to use data as a natural phenomenon. So, and that the next thing is during the data collection, I think some researchers, I think, need to very clear. We should be very careful about the respondents' ethical matters, and we should follow the ethics ranging from consent to confidentiality. So we have to take the consent form. We have to take the permission before starting any interview or case study. So I believe those who actually going through this process will follow the total ethical issues during their field data collection. So being a social researcher, especially those who are actually working on sensitive research, so far I know everybody, especially Kazi Ashraf, Konok, Mamun, so they are working on very sensitive research. So when we actually go to field, we have to keep a very we have to make the field very friendly, need to make the field friendly. And the relationship between researchers and respondents should be very trustworthy. Yeah. So in addition, I think I will prefer honesty and integrity of this social research is very essential. Sometimes when we visit field with some of our friends or collaborators or enumerators, those who are actually used to go for data collection on behalf. So sometimes actually they record or put some wrong or exaggerated information, so or imaginary information, and which actually ultimately hamper our data accuracy. So we have to be very careful. And after the field, I think you know everyone that we have to very good knowledge about analysis. So I feel very happy that most of the researchers here presented a paper are very most of the researchers used qualitative research. So narrative grounded theory approach or discourse analysis. So yes, but some qualitative researchers actually use manual method. For me, I try to, when I used to collect data and try to analyze the data, I use manual method. So I just collected data, then transcribe, then categorizing, so something like this. So then try to relationship between my data and theory. So nowadays, actually, Western people, the Western Hemisphere, I think the people, I think Professor Dina Siddiqui or Nargis Kanafi, they like to use some apps or some tools for analyzing qualitative data. So, and after analysis, I think when we are preparing manuscript, I prefer Professor Dr. Ashrafuddin. He just mentioned that he published few papers. So it's very brilliant. So we have to think, I think, two issues. When we write any issues, any manuscript, anything for manuscript, we have to think two matters. One is result, and another is discussion. So result is the description of the data along with tables, graphs, maps, pictures. But discussion is very critical, should be very critical. And finally, I'll say the concluding part, we have to mention for the concluding part, we have to keep two matters, two things. Number one is limitations of the study. We have to have a clear idea about our limitations of our research.
Professor Alok, can you hear us? You are stuck, probably network issue again. So, okay. we can move. Yes, yeah, Professor. Okay, yeah, yes, he's very fascinating talking about the different kind of rites of passages of writing a dissertation research, from framing conceptualizations, idea, and then argument, building argument to go to field, collecting data, how to interpret data, how to analyze data, what kind of ethical issues, a lot of issues. He's actually is not commenting on, one by one case, rather just giving a kind of comprehensive idea. So probably is in connection issue. We are running out of time, so go ahead to now Professor Nargis Kanefi. She joined a bit lately because she forgot the date and time. Somehow she missed, but finally we got her. Professor Nargis Kanefi from Canada, please join us.
Thank you. It's not so much forgetting. I'm in Brazil and I'm juggling different time slots. So I thought it was Monday for some reason. So I'm very sorry about that.
Okay, please join us. We have brilliant speakers, so they're ready to listen to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I mean, not only I listened, I think all the presentations except the first one, but I also looked at the background of our wonderful presenters. And perhaps, like my colleagues who spoke before me, instead of asking about the individual components of their research, for each presenter, I have some theoretical questions that they might highlight further if there is time in this venue, or we might have a conversation afterwards if they choose to do so. So I'm going to start with Dr. Doris Ijomel Ajauko. And I think her work is a very, very valuable contribution to the aspects of harmful cultural practices as they provide the platform for multi-generational gender-based abuse and creating vulnerable populations. She does very, very difficult work in terms of providing expert research data and field experience. So my one question for her ongoing work is the intersection of gender, health, and social norms. She has a particular focus on the improving of well-being of certain populations in Nigeria, whether she could actually provide a larger context for that debate. So it's not just Nigeria specific, but it could be applied to other contexts in terms of her contribution to that intersectionality lens. So would she be entertaining the idea that maybe she can, in her future work, start with references to the larger debate on intersectionality, gender, health, and social norms, and then move down to Nigeria and then expand again. This is an issue for many of us who do work in the global south. We end up being very site-specific, which then limits the applicability of our work and shortchanges our contributions to the larger field. So that's my one suggestion. About Nazia Han, I mean, it's fascinating work. Sri Lanka and Myanmar and the rise of religious extremism. And it is absolutely true that the lack of work that compares the extreme aspects of Buddhism in both countries, I think it's also a very, very difficult kind of project because the majority populations will not necessarily be receptive to that kind of critical approach. My suggestion is there is a long history of work that's done on religious fundamentalism that is not at all limited to Islam. and that obviously these days include things like Jewish extremism and Orthodox Jewish extremism. And so again, I was wondering whether it is possible to look at these parallel forces of extremist, violent forms of existence that is beyond the reports of human rights activists or members of the parliament or the actual experiences of the Rohingya, but talk about the potential for extremist, blind forms of violence in religion and in belief systems. So for Konak Chapa, I think another very important intervention in terms of medical anthropology. So I'm actually quite intrigued that we have at least two contributors who are very well versed in health and medical affairs and the gender dimension of that. And the navigation of the reproductive choices in refugee camp settings and social, cultural, socioeconomic factors that shape their decisions is very timely. Now, I want to ask Konok the concept that they use, which is crisis within crisis. I think it's a very, very important concept. Yeah. And I think it has a lot of potential to make a contribution to the field if they develop that further. Because I mean, I myself talked about extreme precarity, for instance, concerning Syrian woman, refugee woman, and precarity was not enough. It was a very distinct form of precarity. So crisis and crisis within crisis, I think, is a very powerful terminology that should be taken further. And I understand that Konok has connections with the regional chapters of Bangladesh Health Watch. And so they have one foot in policy making in the field and then the other foot in academia. So that's a very potent combination again. So I wanted to congratulate them. Qazi Ashrafuddin, beautiful doctoral project, intersectional methodological framework, transgender research in the South Asian context. Everything that comes out of that project is commendable. But if we want to move beyond that, I want to ask Qazi Ashraf how they engage with critical posthumanism. What does that mean in their work? Because the language of engaging epistemological or ontological research questions involving the hijras, it's an invitation to a conversation, but I'm not quite sure ultimately, where that conversation leads. It's a theme. So obviously they're at the beginnings of their work. And the one concept that they use that really caught my attention is heteronationalistic necropower. Okay, so that's again like to the point, very powerful. But then how does that relate to critical posthumanism? That was a question mark for me. I just needed more fodder to understand. But all is going in the right direction as far as I can see. Ghazal Han, she speaks for herself in terms of her past involvements and and her work, from what I can decipher, on Indian Muslim widows and the shadowing that has been happening among the Muslim widows was already promising, and now I understand she actually moved on to borderscapes, memory politics, and prosthetic memory and Rohingya narratives. Now, I have one question. She cited Spivak, which is fair, suggesting that the Rohingyas are the worst subaltern. I'm not quite sure they are actually at the moment. There are other populations who are really, really suffering. Maybe Spivak's vision was limited to Southeast Asia or South Asia. I don't know, but if you go to many parts of the Middle East and North Africa, or even where I am right now in Latin America, they're like very, very aggravated situations of subalternization and deadly marginalization happening. So, and as Nasruddin said, I did work on Rohingyas and I continue to supervise on Rohingyas. So I can see the distinct qualities of doing research on the Rohingya population, but I'm not sure we have to create this kind of pinnacle of suffering in terms of identifying Rohingyas as the thing. So I'm just a little bit cautious about that. And I can see Ghazal does a cross reading of suffering as selectively framed and curated in literature, which is quite a distinct take compared to the other ones that we've listened to. So I wanted to. She mentioned some thinkers. Given that our audience is going to be a mixed audience, yeah, so it was internal referencing. So I suggest in future, maybe we go with concepts rather than names of thinkers, because not everybody might be familiar with those thinkers, just to increase audience reception. And the questions about borderscapes and memory politics, I think these are very timely. And Ghazal, you might know that the Memory Studies Association annual conference just ended in Prague. On account of me being here in depths of Brazil, I could not be over there, but that's a very strong community for you to link up with.
Okay.
Yeah, one last, Mamoun.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
okay.
No,
So
please carry on.
Okay, so race, migration, postcoloniality. All right, triplet. It's the Holy Trinity, right? And Mamoun goes for it, like really goes for it. And he's actually looking at racialization of detention. Again, this is something that's done that's studied very extensively, especially in the Western Hemisphere. So the question will be, for me, as far as detention practices are concerned, and this is a real question, whether detention practices copy each other, east or west, south or north, it doesn't matter, or whether there's something unique for the context that Mamoun is studying. So that's all I'm going to say for now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nargis. You have joined from Brazil, and in our last refugee migration labs, our refugee day sessions, you contributed a lot, and thank you so much. We could continue the discussions, very fascinating discussions, very illuminating discussions. It's wonderful, engaging discussions. We could continue, but we are running out of time. But by the time Professor Alok has come back, fortunately, so it will be fair for me to give you 1 or 2 minutes to just wrap up your discussion, and finally we'll wrap up our whole session. I know the people from around the world are watching these wonderful sessions, and I will give 1 or 2 minutes to concluding speech. Before that, Professor Alok, just 1 or 2 minutes for you to wrap up, please.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a technical matter. I wish all of you actually success who presented a brilliant presentation today, and there were a lot of good comments from the audiences. So, and I think we should give a good say thank you to the director of RML for organizing such a big platform for the young researchers. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Professor Olopal, and thank you so much, everyone. Actually, we could continue the discussions, and I'm very happy and very fascinated just thinking of that, how serious academic discussion could be so entertaining. And I'm receiving a lot of comments in social media platforms from different parts of the world, from America, from UK, from Canada, from Australia, from India, from Japan, and North Korea, South Korea. I'm very fascinated. So we could continue the discussions. I'm happy to present our 6 billion research affiliates affiliates, and we've still 9 affiliates we have, and it's a brilliant work they are doing. And thank you so much, Professor Dina Siddiqui, for your wonderful comments, wonderful discussions, and I hope all young early career researchers, they are benefited greatly from your discussions. And Professor Alok Pal is a very suggestive, very concrete to the point discussions, and also Professor Nargis Kenefi, and especially thanks to you because you joined from far away from Brazil. You are not in your regular settings, so we could continue the discussions, but we have to end up. But finally, I would say Refugee and Migration Lab is the fast growing research collectives, and many people are showing interest to join us. We have Professor Dina Siddiqui is our non-resident fellow. Professor Nargis Kenefi is our non-resident fellow. Professor Alok Pal is a research fellow, and all speakers are Refugee and Migration Lab's research affiliates. So we hope to continue this very engaging, fascinating academic discussion and very cutting-edge research and its contribution. Yeah, we hope that through this kind of work, event organization, we could contribute to the global scholarship and also think beyond, because scholarship production is also a politics of knowledge. We can also understand what is happening between global south and global north, and how young researchers are actually bringing up with a very fascinating cutting-edge research that could challenge the established research scholarship. We hope to contribute a lot more in future. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all the spectators from around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.